Good morning, good morning, good morning. Welcome to today's morning blast with myself and Michael Brown. As always, we jumpstart your trading day by giving you a review of what's happened, a preview of what's to come, smile on your face, add a bit of value maybe, who knows, whatever, anything's possible. It is Monday, rather, the 30th of June, all day. This final day of the month. How we've got to July, I have no idea. But before we crack on, I will do the legals. Nothing discussed in this space session constitute trade or investment advice or infers any kind of endorsement by PIQ, myself, Ryan Paisley, or indeed Mr. Michael Brown. Hello, Mr. Michael Brown. How are you?
Well, a very good morning to you, Ryan. Good morning, everyone. Happy end of the month, end of the quarter, and end of the first half of 2025 as well.
Get it in the book. Get it in the book. It's done. It's behind us. No one
Oh,
cares
well,
anymore.
not quite.
It's all about Q2. Fuck it.
H2.
H2, yeah, Q3, that'll do. Oh god, mate, it's too hot for me. It's far too hot for me. I got sunburnt
Your
yesterday.
your
I'm
CFO who's listening in is very relieved that you have no control of the accounts now.
honestly, I got a bit too sunburnt yesterday. I didn't even drink. I think that's the problem. If I drink, I find a shady spot and hide away. But I was stone cold sober, so I got sunburnt and didn't sleep very well. Yeah, I'm in a bad way. I'm not gonna lie. But anyway,
Oh,
enough about me.
didn't.
Yeah, diddums indeed. Enough about me. How are you?
Yeah, I'm not too bad at all, thank you, mate. Not too bad at all. I've come into our boardroom this morning, so forgive the echo, but it's the coolest room in the office, so
Oh,
I'm
nice.
taking advantage of the air conditioning while I can.
Mate,
Right. Anyway, enough about the heat.
yeah.
Shall we crack on?
Yeah, let's do it. And there's no Iranian headlines to kick off, so yeah, go for it.
Well, indeed, that's a good start, and we'll also just take it as read that London is far too hot today, and it's going to be far too hot tomorrow as well.
Yeah.
As for markets, then, well, it was a positive end to the week last week, with both the S&P 500 and the Nasdaq 100 ending Friday at record highs. The S&P's first record high since February, and we have seen those gains extend, with futures trading about 0.5% higher in early trade this morning. Those gains came as markets continued to obviously price out geopolitical risk, and as the bull case remains a very, very solid one. There was a deluge of trade news on Friday, but ultimately most of it pretty positive, and the one bit of it that wasn't positive has turned into a positive this morning. What do I mean by all of that? Well, firstly, we heard from Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent. He was making a whole host of remarks as the week drew to a close. He was touting expectations that there's going to be between 10 and 30 deals done in the near future. But what was more interesting and more important was that he said, and I quote, trade may be wrapped up by Labor Day. For those listeners not in the United States, Labor Day comes on the 1st of September, and this has led to expectations, or really sort of growing consensus, that the 9th of July tariff deadline is not quite the set in stone limit that it may have once been, and that actually things are looking a little bit more flexible. And President Trump was very much echoing the broad sentiments of that in an interview that he gave to Fox News, who else, over the weekend. Speaking of Fox News,
Sorry,
their report. Oh,
just
go on.
on that, because it's important to tap ourselves on the back when we get things right. We did suggest from about Wednesday onwards last week that, well, potentially even earlier than that, that this was very much likely to be the case from like the vibe and the kind of the rumours and the murmurs that we were getting from the powers that be in Washington. So yeah, I think this was quite well telegraphed. So it was good for us to flag it very early.
Indeed, yes. Well done to us.
Exactly, but mate, we got to do
No
it. 'Cause no one else to do it.
I
Fuck
was
'em.
going to say, no one's going to blow our horns for us, so we'll do it
Right.
ourselves. Oh dear, get your mind out of the gutter, for goodness sake. Where was I? Before that, when it will carry on. Oh yes, Fox News. Charlie Gasparino from Fox News was also saying on Friday that Team Trump is close to announcing a handful of trade deals, that they are making progress on Japan, South Korea, and Vietnam. Charlie Gasparino says this at least 3 times a week, so do take it with a little bit of a pinch of salt. And actually, just going back to what we were saying a moment ago around the idea of a possible extension, there were reports via Reuters just a few minutes ago that South Korean officials are actually now looking to extend that 9th of July deadline. So we will monitor that one very closely, because I think that will be a sort of acid test for how
Yeah,
negotiations are likely
exactly
to
that.
go elsewhere. Meanwhile, also on the trade front, According to Bloomberg sources, the EU and the US are confident they'll reach a deal on tariffs by the July deadline. The wording of this is very important because the sources that are cited in this piece say that both sides believe, and I quote here, some form of a trade agreement can be made by the 9th of July. Now, of course, President Trump will say that it's the biggest and most beautiful and best trade deal that anyone's ever done. What it is instead likely to be is a sort of one-page document that says, we promise to negotiate further, and here's what we're going to talk about. Please don't put any tariffs on us in the meantime. Very much, again, in line with what we were saying previously. But I think the important takeaway from this story is that many leaders within the EU are now prepared to accept what they're calling some degree of imbalances to avoid any trade escalation. Effectively, that is running contrary to the reporting last week, where the EU officials were saying a 10% baseline tariff could still elicit retaliation. It looks like the EU have softened their stance on that, basically saying we'll kind of take what we're given in order to prevent any economic
And
damage.
I think it's important to note that I think one of the reasons why the EU as a whole, the bloc, kind of taking this kind of slight tweak or slight tack in how they're handling it is because they've been getting some severe pushback. Everyone loves a good pushback story from the likes of MERS, and like the powerhouses of Europe are kind of really starting to kick up a bit of a fuss and saying, look, we are handling, as a bloc, we're handling this very poorly. We're overcomplicating matters. We just need to get back to basics, which is what other nations are doing. And I think, it's not for the first time. We've seen that for someone like the EU, simplifying talks and stuff like that is incredibly difficult.
Yes, no, absolutely. And just lastly on trade, quite a lot actually over the last 3 months. I've been sat here thinking I've seen this film before, and so it proved again on Friday. Trump does something extreme to force the other side, whoever
Yes.
they may be, to reverse a policy position and bring them to the table and ultimately extract what he would call a win. Well, it seems that the taco man has struck again, because we heard late on Friday that Trump was going to be ending all trade talks with Canada due to Canada enacting a new digital services tax. Now,
And
I would
what's
say that
happened
this,
this morning or last
well,
night?
I'll get
Go
on to
on.
that momentarily. But I would say that this digital service tax, it's not as if Canada just dreamt it up on Friday
No.
afternoon. This is something that they've been drafting for years now. So I don't know why Trump suddenly decided Friday is when he needed to attack them for this. But as you rightly say, Ryan, about 3 o'clock this morning, guess what the Canadians have done? Well, they've decided to rescind that digital trade tax, and talks with the United States will continue. So yet again, a sort of classic example of Trump's bark being a lot worse than his bite. And also, I think actually interestingly, markets are becoming, I don't want to tempt fate here, but becoming somewhat more immune to this sort of thing. We had a very, very little wobble in the Canadian dollar and in equity futures towards the back end of Friday's session. But as I alluded to earlier on, we closed about 0.5% higher, and the loonie then ended the day pretty much flat. So I think the market's degree of sensitivity to those trade headlines
Yeah.
has diminished quite considerably.
To be honest, this is a phenomenon. This is a phenomenon that we do see in markets in general for a lot of kind of topics. The initial, like, well, it can be a war, it can be trade, it can be whatever. When we first get those first few weeks or first week of headlines, markets do have extended moves, and then the market becomes kind of there's more
I think we just get
elastic.
bored, frankly.
Well, to be honest, as a trader, you probably do. That is pretty much it. And we see that it takes bigger and bigger headlines to move the market to the same degree as a weaker headline would have done 2 weeks previously. So it's not just something to do with trade that the market's getting complacent. I can kind of hear an echo in myself. I don't know if it's from you or what, but it's very weird.
Oh.
It's just great to see that we're seeing that kind of that same market phenomenon play out again here, and it's just one to be aware of, especially if you're a newer trader. Don't expect the same headline to have the same result 3 times in a row, kind of thing.
No, absolutely. Fully agree on that front. A few other things away from trade, just to actually quite a lot to run through from Friday, to be honest. In terms of other market moves, the dollar remaining on the back foot with the dollar index below 97, cable holding north of 137, and the euro remaining north of 117. We also saw actually probably the most interesting move on the day on Friday was that in gold, with the yellow metal losing its shine
Oh,
once more, trading down by around about 1.5% on the day. Spot gold gold, ending Friday below $3,300 an ounce, and also below the 50-day moving average. And that's the first time we've closed below the 50-day moving average since January. So perhaps a sign that short-term momentum is beginning to shift in favour of the bears a little bit. And of course, for those listeners unaware, moving averages are about the only technical indicator worth paying attention to.
Indeed.
In terms of other notable events from Friday on the data front, we had the latest PCE figures out of the United States. Core PCE rising 2.7% on a year-on-year basis in May, up from the 2.5% that we saw in April. That is, of course, the Fed's preferred inflation gauge, but it's not going to shift the outlook in any way at all. We did, and I just want to mention this, we did see a fall in personal income. I think that was down by 0.4% on a month-on-month basis. All the usual suspects running around saying, oh my God, it's the first time that's fallen since 2021. The end is nigh. Ignore all of that. The reason why it fell is because there were some quite significant changes to social security benefits. And effectively that has just been
Details.
distorting the numbers. So anyone telling you that is a sign that the US is on
The
the
sky
verge
is
of
falling.
Armageddon, just ignore them. We also had the latest consumer sentiment data from the University of Michigan, sentiment at 60.7 per the final June reading. That's a marginal upward revision from the preliminary 60.5. In terms of other headlines and news flow, of course, it was a day that ended in a Y, so President Trump had another go at Fed Chair Powell. He also confirmed, as if this needed confirmation, that he is going to put someone in as Fed Chair that wants to cut rates. I
No
mean,
shit.
obviously, that's why everyone's trying to sort of outdove each other in the race for the top job. Trump also said, and this is actually getting slightly farcical now, I quote here, I think we should be paying 1% interest right now. So we've gone from, I believe at the start of all of this, it was a case of just cut rates, presumably 25 basis points. Then it was a full point. Then it was 200 basis points. Then it was 250 basis points. And Trump is now calling for rates to be as low as 1%, which is of course a 400 basis point cut. I mean, at the rate this is going, he's going to be calling for rates to be negative this
I
time
was just
next
about to
week. So
say.
watch this space.
I was about to say, make NERP great again.
Oh, please don't. Sticking with politics in the US, I promise this is the last political headline. Trump's tax bill, the One Big Beautiful Bill Act, that has cleared a key hurdle in the Senate. Now, bear in mind, this is not the bill being passed into law. What's happened is the Senate voted in favour of beginning debate on the legislation. So this happened on
A meeting about a
back end of
meeting.
yeah, very much so. And this gets more confusing. So bear with me here. This
Uh-oh.
took place on in the very early hours of Saturday morning. And then the Democrats, who are obviously the opposition in the United States, exercised their right to have the bill read in the Senate. Now, by the bill read, I don't mean simply reading out the title of it. I mean the clerk of the Senate standing up and reading out all 900 odd pages of the bill. So that is what they've been doing in the Senate over the entirety of the weekend. That process concluded late yesterday. They will now go to what's called a vote-a-rama, which is essentially where any senator, honestly, you think the House of Commons is bad. This is essentially where any senator can propose amendments to the legislation and they are voted on one after the other. This process, to the best of my knowledge, and please do correct me if I'm wrong on this one, this process can pretty much go on until they run out of amendments.
Yeah.
Now, bearing in mind there's 100 senators, that could take quite some time.
It's kind of anyone that used to watch the West Wing, best series ever. It's kind of along the lines of a filibuster. Basically, they're
Yeah,
really just
effectively.
they're trying to drag this out for as long as possible and hoping that something comes up where it means they can scrap it.
I think there is, yeah, you're absolutely right. It is. And I think there is also a degree of, sort of crafty political act from the Democrat side, where effectively Chuck Schumer, the Democrat leader, has gone, I'm going to make you read this all out so that I can use this in my adverts. I think is
Yeah.
frankly one of
No.
the reasons why they've done it.
No, absolutely.
Now, of course, that voting is set to begin at around 9 o'clock this morning Eastern, so 2 o'clock here in the UK. We don't know how long that will go on for. Of course, there is still a plan, or at least Trump has a plan, to get this bill on on his desk by Independence Day, which is, of course, on Friday. So we will see whether or not that happens, but certainly one to watch. And just a few other things very, very briefly from me, because I appreciate I've rambled on a lot this morning. OPEC Plus, according to Bloomberg sources, said to be weighing another supersized oil output increase at their July meeting. This will be another 411,000 barrels per day, very much in line with prior reporting.
Yeah.
The Saudis want to get rid of all the voluntary cuts by the end of the year. In the tech space, according to the information, Microsoft, their next AI chip is being delayed by 6 months. I didn't realize they had an AI chip, so next is new to me. Sticking with that, Meta, they want to raise about $30 billion in order to fund its push into artificial intelligence. They're in talks with a whole load of private credit firms. They want $3 billion of equity and the rest in debt. And two final things from me. Reuters sources reporting Friday that Shein, who of course the fast fashion retailer in China, they're going to file confidentially for an IPO in Hong Kong at the start of this week. Not overly confidential now, if we're being completely honest. And last but by no means least, the Fed late on Friday confirming that all 22 banks that they supervise have passed their annual stress tests. So we can sleep easy on that front. And that is all from me for the time being.
Wonderful, wonderful. I'm trying to find headlines that you haven't already read out. You've done me you've done me a little turn there. But thank you for that. Just read out some choice headlines from the overnight news roundup. Obviously as normal, put together by Zach Eisman. If you don't follow him already, do so on Twitter. Also, make sure you subscribe to our Substack. It's the easiest way to get up to date with all the major market moving headlines that you might have missed whilst you're asleep or over the weekend if it's a Monday. Starting off in trade, as Michael spoke about just now, Canada have scrapped their digital services tax on tech giants like Meta and Alphabet to revive trade talks with the US. Trump claims buyer found for TikTok describes a group of, quote, very wealthy people to be revealed soon amid US-China tensions.
Oh, actually, on that one,
Go on.
sorry, this is another example of, I don't know whether anyone else has read about this, but the whole 2 weeks thing that Trump seems to love using,
Oh, God, yeah.
where in this interview he said, we found a buyer and I'll tell you about it in 2 weeks. Now, this seems to be Trump's sort of favourite unit of time, where two
Yeah.
weeks could mean I never come back to it, or it could mean the next day, as it did in the case of
Yeah.
the strikes on
I
Iran.
think
So,
I did see someone did I can't remember where it was, a blog post or whatever, and basically they were kind of a smart person, and which is unlike me, which is probably why I wasn't reading it. That I couldn't really get my head around it. Was the fact that it was all to do with news cycles. Now there's a strategy why he says 2 weeks is because it's
yeah,
just long enough where it gives them time to come up with something. But if they don't, within two
everyone's
weeks,
forgotten about it.
exactly, the news cycle is now on something completely different. And if you look back over so far over his term, it's kind of been spot on. Every week and a half, 2 weeks, there's something else that's massive happening going on in the world, be it
Mm.
bombs flying off or some other trade deal or something. There's always something every 2 weeks. So if you keep saying, "Oh, we'll get more information in 2 weeks," you can either fill your promise early and get something out there, or if you can't think of anything to do, you just we're on to the next news cycle. So yeah, it's an interesting one. It kind of is playing out correctly. So
Yeah.
I think just a rule of thumb, if you hear 2 weeks, read that as they haven't got anything yet and they're going to hope to kind of wing it for the next 2 weeks. But
Yeah,
anyway,
it's a placeholder, basically.
yeah, no, exactly that. US plans Trump-led CEO delegation to China later this year to boost trade ties. That's according to Nikkei. That'd be one to watch. Trump calls Japan auto trade, quote, unfair, urges increased US energy and goods imports to cut trade deficit. The EU, they're pushing for US trade deal before July 9th, as we've said. But they are open for kicking the can down the road. I think it was the French minister, Michael, correct me if I'm wrong, that said, look, we'd rather get a good deal and get this done after July 9th rather than rush it and get a deal that could be detrimental to the EU. China's export controls expand beyond rare earths, risking supply chain chaos and challenging US trade deal claims. That's going to the FT. UK-US tariff reduction deal takes effect, lowering import barriers per the British government. So finally, it looks like we've actually got, I think this could be the first official deal that's been done, really. Unless, the other one's been kind of a bit half-assed and kind of a bit fudgy.
Yeah.
India extends US trade talks to finalise deal before July 9th, tariff hikes. China, they oppose trade deals sacrificing its interests for US tariff relief, says the Minister of Commerce. Taiwan, they're reporting constructive progress in the second round of US trade talks. Macro news, US Senate advances Trump's tax plan and spending bill, potentially adding 3.3 trillion to national debt over a decade, but that's per the CBO. Elon, he slams the Senate bill as insane and destructive, warning of job losses and strategic harm.
Of course, that has nothing whatsoever to do with the fact that his electric vehicle tax credit is going for a burden, does
You
it?
took the words completely out. It's amazing how your friends become your enemies as soon as they're withholding money. Fed, as Michael said earlier on, the stress test showed the 22 major US banks resilient to severe downturn, maintaining strong capital levels. This is important because it allows banks to free up some capital for buybacks, dividends, etc.,
Yeah.
etc. Trump's fiscal policies and Fed attacks threaten US haven status for foreign investors, warned an FT polled economists. Global financial systems face risks from trade tensions, geopolitics. That's gone to the BIS. Reuters and PIQ have put out the article on that. Give it a scroll. I'll try and retweet it if I can find it. Hedge funds like Millennium and Point72 dive into private credit to diversify as financial institutions. That's according to the FT. China's manufacturing, that shrinks for a third month, but policy support shows signs of stabilizing activity. Japan's factory output rises 0.5% in May, missing the market forecast of 3.5% growth. So a big miss there. UK plans insurance market reforms to boost competitiveness, potentially worth billions. I'm assuming that means potentially worth billions in savings to the consumer and not millions more to the insurance market.
I would
A
hope
couple of,
so.
well, yeah, fingers crossed. A couple of from geopolitics. We do actually have an Iran headline, but it's Iran doubts US brokered Israel ceasefire. Warns of retaliation against any new aggression. No change there. Turkey's opposition party faces verdict as investors brace for market fallout after Istanbul's mayor's arrest. Nothing politically motivated there. Equities, just a few before I hand back to you. Nvidia insiders, apparently they've sold over $1 billion in stock amid the AI-driven share surge. I believe it's up about 60% from the lows, if I recall correctly. I'm
Yeah,
guessing at
something
that
like
number.
that.
It's something like that, isn't it? Global server market to hit 366 billion in 2025, driven by AI demand, with Q1 2025 at a record 95.2 billion. Big numbers with a B. Norway, finally for me, before I hand back, Norway's pension fund divests from Oshkosh and ThyssenKrupp over Israeli military ties. No puns from me today. Back to you in the studio. It's too hot for puns.
Oh, I'm bitterly disappointed about that, Ryan,
Sorry,
but
mate.
I'm
Sorry.
sure I can pick up that mantle.
Well, but
In
this, look, if we're being very honest, it's because I'm scared to compete with you.
As you should be. Right, in terms of today then, and also the week ahead, as it's a Monday, a relatively light docket actually lies await in terms of today. Although, as I mentioned at the top of the call, do of course remember that it is end of the month, end of the quarter, and end of the half, so there could be
Month
the
end
potential.
flows.
Exactly.
Drink.
Although, if anyone is leaving their month end flows to the last Monday, then they probably
Yeah.
need to give their head a wobble, to be honest.
Yeah.
Anyway, in terms of scheduled events, we do have some inflation figures out of Germany. The regional numbers are due at the top of the hour in about 5 minutes, and then we get the nationwide numbers at 1 o'clock this afternoon. Headline CPI is seen at 2.2% in June, up from the 2.1% in May. Bear in mind, of course, that the French and Spanish inflation figures were a little bit on the hot side on Friday, so that could be a potential lead there. We also get the latest Chicago PMI figures out of the States this afternoon as well. 2:45 for all the rest of us. If you're an MNI subscriber, you get it 3 minutes early. The index expected at 42.9, up from a prior 40.5. Other things just bear in mind today, the main one is that it is the start of the ECB's annual conference slash expenses paid holiday in
Jolly.
Sintra. This means that we will be hearing from a whole host of ECB speakers over the course of the next 2 or 3 days. It also means that today marks the conclusion of the ECB's strategy review. Now, I was quite shocked to learn that they actually have a strategy, to be completely honest, but apparently they do, and they have reviewed it. So we will see what they have to say. I believe the results of that are due at around about lunchtime here in
And
London.
you can be sure they're going to be patting themselves on the back, whatever they've done.
Oh, absolutely. They've done a brilliant job. Although, to be fair, actually, having said that, the BTP Bund spread is at its tightest since 2015 this morning. So they've done something right on that front.
Well, yeah, quite.
Um,
I think that might be more indicative to the fact that Germany's in the fucking hole, and
Oh, I
Italy's
think it
actually doing
might be
quite
as
well.
well, to be honest.
Yeah, no, I think, in fact, if anything, I think the ECB have probably just got in the way of this.
Yeah, they probably have, to be fair. Anyway, moving on to the rest of the week. In terms of Tuesday, it is manufacturing PMI day. We get final prints
We
from pretty much everywhere, as well as the ISM index out of the States. That is expected at 48.7, up from a prior 48.5. Also on Tuesday, we get Eurozone inflation figures, of course, following on from all those regional prints that I just mentioned. Headline CPI is seen at 2% on an annual basis in June, up from the 1.9% prior. And Tuesday also brings the JOLTS job openings figure, and that may be scrutinised a little bit more than normal. It is May data, but of course there are a few people worried about the state of the US labour market at the moment, so that may attract some more attention than it otherwise would. The main event, though, on Tuesday is going to be a panel in Sintra, the big beasts of the central banking world, all on stage together. Fed Chair Powell, ECB President Lagarde, BOE Governor Andrew Bailey, and Bank of Japan Governor Ueda all on stage at around 3 o'clock tomorrow afternoon. So that is certainly one to watch. Into Wednesday, we get the latest unemployment figures from the Eurozone. We also get the latest ADP employment figure from the United States, which, as always, is worth entirely ignoring because it tells us nothing about where the official payrolls number is going to be. Also, another ton of ECB speak on Wednesday too. Moving into Thursday, by far and away the busiest day of the week, and Thursday is Jobs Day. Of course, the US will be out on Friday for Independence Day, so we will be receiving the June US labour market numbers on Thursday afternoon. Do not get caught out by that one. Headline non-farm payrolls at the moment seen having risen by 110,000 in June, a slowdown from the 139,000 that we saw in the month of May. Unemployment, that is seen rising to 4.3% from a prior 4.2%, although, and I don't have the figure to hand, but if I remember rightly, the unrounded unemployment rate was pretty close to 4.3% last time out anyway. Average earnings, meanwhile, seen rising by 0.3% on the month, down from the 0.4% that we saw previously. Other notable prints on Thursday include a whole host of services PMI prints from pretty much everywhere, the latest US factory orders data, CPI from Switzerland, and the weekly US jobless claims numbers, but no one's going to pay any attention to those given that they're out at the same time as the payrolls print. Also on Thursday, we get minutes from the June ECB meeting, and with Friday being Independence Day, bear in mind that we have a couple of early closes on the docket on Thursday as well. Cash equity trade, that will finish up at 1 o'clock New York, 6 o'clock here in London, and cash treasury trade will finish up an hour later than that at 2 o'clock New York, 7 o'clock here in London. And then naturally Friday, with it being Independence Day, is likely to be a pretty subdued day. The docket is completely empty, to be completely honest with you, although of course Friday is when President Trump wants to be signing that one big beautiful bill act into law. So that is certainly something to watch, and also worth watching any trade and geopolitical headlines as we move through the week as well. And I think I've managed to squeeze that in just under half an hour.
And what else is happening on Friday?
Oh, you're buying me a beer, aren't you?
I might buy you a beer. For anyone London based or even UK based, I see Tom's listening in. I know he's going to travel down outside of London. We're going to be having some
He hasn't
beers.
got to travel that far.
Well, he's got to travel further than me.
Mm.
And you, as it's Friday, as it's Independence Day, so US markets are closed. As it's the first Friday of the month, we're going to have what used to be deemed a non-farm pint. So if you are around, I'm guessing it's going to be the Oyster Shed, but I will confirm because it's just a nice venue to have, especially when it's sunny on the river. But yeah, if you are around, come and join us. But anyway, enough of that. Michael, thank you as always. Listeners, thank you as always for tuning in. Yeah, whatever you're doing today, keep it tight. If you are in London or in the UK, make sure you put some sun cream on. Yeah, and stay safe. We'll see you all tomorrow. Much love.
Bye for now.